Hey y'all, want to do a little bit of a different video today, talking to you about finishing big projects, because finishing a project, whether it's just a song or an EP or an album or what have you, takes a lot of work. And having a system or at least a thought process in place of how you're going to accomplish these big goals, I think is really helpful. And so my goal with this channel is always just to empower you to feel comfortable and confident to create great sounding music in your home studio. But part of that equally is the mindset and the way we think about it. And when I have connections that make sense to me and feel exciting to me, I want to share those with you, because even if it's not helpful to as many people as my top mixing videos will be helpful to, if it's just helpful to a handful of people, it's still worth it to me to put this out there. So first of all, if at any point while you're watching this video, if you're like, I really like this, please let me know in the comments below. One, because I just want to know that this is helpful. Two, because YouTube loves it. And if you think YouTube should show my videos to more people, then leaving comments is one of the most helpful things you can do. Commenting, liking, subscribing, the obvious stuff, but commenting, I think disproportionately YouTube likes that. And then finishing videos. If they're worth it to you, finish the videos. It makes a big difference. Anyway, getting into it a little bit more, explaining basically consistency is something that I've been obsessed with, and it, I think, has actually held me back. So let me explain just a little bit. This video is going to be different. We're just going to talk. It's not going to be edited. It's not going to be super streamlined, but I think I'm going to be able to articulate my point better by just talking it out with you than if I were to try to like draft out and script out a whole thing. I think just talking this through with you, I think is going to be really helpful. Okay, so I've been struggling for a few years with failing at some of my projects, not finishing big goals that I've had. And I've really been frustrated trying to figure out why. Like, I don't know why I can finish this over here. I'm making a lot of progress with this thing over here. But when it comes to these big specific goals, I'm not finishing, or I'm finishing in a way that feels extremely stressful and confusing and like not my best work. And what I realized came recently, like I had an epiphany recently when I got an email from this great guy named Ali Abdaal, who's a great author. He has a great book called Feel Good Productivity, and a great YouTuber. He has an amazing YouTube channel. I think it's just called Ali Abdaal. And I think he's got like 6 million subscribers. I'll link to both the book and his channel down below. But he is someone who, he went to med school while starting a YouTube channel and then became a doctor while running a YouTube channel. So he was very good at getting stuff done. And so he's put a lot of time and energy into really understanding productivity and understanding himself. And recently he put out his book, Feel Good Productivity, which is great. And he sent out an email not too long ago, a couple weeks ago actually, about 4 things that surprised him in writing that book. And one of the things that really kind of unlocked something with me in terms of understanding and shifting my thought process, he said that he found that he got more done and had better clarity of thought when he worked in sprints of intensity compared to periods of consistency. And I'd become obsessed with consistency, so noticing that, seeing him say that, really was like, hang on, it's okay to not just focus on consistent, like small chipping away at results. So for a little bit of context, if you're writing a book, the advice that everyone gives is that you should sit down for 2 to 4 hours a day, every single day, or at least an hour a day, every single day, and just make progress at it. And if you do that over time, you're going to finish your book, and you're just going to chip away at it, and eventually you'll get there and it'll be done. And it's just that little 1% making progress towards being done with it, or 2% making progress being done with it, adds up, and eventually you finish your book. And that resonates with me so hard. I love consistency. A few years ago when I realized that small incremental improvements in mixing is the secret to better mixes, 1% improvement just in getting your level set, 1% improvement with your EQ, 1% improvement with your compression. Nothing should feel super heavy-handed, or rarely, very few moves should feel very heavy-handed in a mix. And that would yield you, it adds up over the span of your whole mix to create this really great professional sounding result. And that got me really obsessed with the idea of consistency. And so I started thinking about 1% improvement. And honestly, a lot of this also came from Atomic Habits by James Clear, which is an amazing book. But that got me thinking a lot about 1% improvements and how I could apply them anywhere and everywhere. And so I started walking every day. It was a smaller accomplishment than trying to do big 30% improvements, like huge, massive goals. But just walking every day was way better for me. It was something I could easily be consistent with. And I tried to basically put everything into the, okay, how could I just chip away at everything over a long period and everything gets done? And when I look back at the year, I'm like, wow, I accomplished so much, but it never felt like too much. I was just doing 2 hours a day on this project and 2 hours a day on this project. And so I've tried to put everything into that. And I even a couple years ago did a video, or maybe last year, did a video on how to get more music done. And I basically spell out kind of that plan of small incremental improvement. And I still think for some people that's the better approach. But I'm realizing, at least for me, it was failing me. It was holding me back, because what Ali Abdaal spells out in his email is basically when he worked in 2 to 4, I think he did 4-hour blocks every morning working on his book. When he worked in 4-hour blocks, he wasn't getting super in the zone. He would, his thought process wasn't super clear. And he doesn't say this, but it definitely makes sense to me that it also isn't like entering into his subconscious in a way that's really benefiting him. He's getting more creative, and it's kind of like this underlying thing that's pervasive, because he is constantly bouncing back and forth between writing the book and doing something else, and writing the book and doing something else. And compared to when he would do these big sprints of intensity, as he called them, where he would just dive in for a whole week and spend a whole week just working on the book, just focusing on the book. And in those periods, he would get more done. He felt better with the work that he did. It was easier to get done. It felt more natural. And I think that little shift, just that permission from him, saying that made a big difference for him and was the right approach for him, made it so much easier for me to feel like, okay, that's something that I should consider doing as well, right? That made it okay for me to think about that. And so up until I got that email and had that little epiphany moment, I had been planning this year. I have 3 big projects, kind of 4, but 3 main big projects. I'm building a home studio, a new home studio. So this is going to be like at my house, small little studio, mostly for mixing and videos. And then I'm building a bigger home studio that is going to be for recording drums and for all sorts of other stuff. It's going to be great. And for mixing with like speakers, a full setup. It's going to be great. And I'm going to go document the experience, go through it, explain how to think about setting up a home studio, all that stuff. So building a home studio, I'm working on a full length album with my band, because first and foremost, I'm a band guy. I am someone that is working on music in a home studio, and that's why I like to talk to you about it. And then third, I am writing a book. So book stuff was really relevant to me. And my plan had been, well, I really want to finish this book by the end of the year. So I just need to start ticking away at it. So over last year, I really started to figure out kind of like the bones, the structure of the book. And the goal of this book is just everything from setting up your first home studio with the first bits of gear that you get, all the way through releasing music that sounds professional and how to get in front of people. And so it's going to be an awesome book. I'm very excited for it. But my plan had been to finish it by the end of the year, or just chip away at it. 2 hours a day is what I was thinking. I couldn't. I was like, 4 hours is probably too much for me, but I could do 2 hours a day. So I was going to do 2 hours a day every day, 5 days a week, 4 or 5 days a week. I have my daughter on Mondays. I have my daughter every day, but she doesn't go to daycare on Mondays. And so I have her at home. I'm on duty with her. So 4 days a week, I was going to write the book. But then I was, okay, I'm going to do that. And then I also have to do YouTube videos. So on Tuesdays in the afternoon, I do a YouTube video. Then Wednesdays, I would work in the studio in the afternoons. And then Thursdays, I would do all my stuff for the community. So I have a private community, and I do master classes for them, and live calls, live trainings, all that stuff for them. Private community, if you don't know about it, definitely I'll put the waitlist link down below. It's not open right now, but it's awesome. It's been so cool. Anyway, I do all that stuff on Thursday, and then on Friday, I'd go back to the studio. So Wednesdays and Fridays in the afternoon was going to be my studio time, or 10 a.m. on would be my studio time. That was not, I was getting so stressed, because I was like, how am I going to finish the studio? If let's say my daughter's out on Wednesday, she's sick, or it snows or whatever on a Wednesday, and she can't go to daycare, then I'm not going to work at all on Wednesday in the studio, and I probably won't work at all in the book. And then, so I'll just get like 3 hours a week to build this studio. And I'm building like acoustic panel walls. Like, I'm building this studio. And so it's going to be a bigger project than that. And that was stressing me out so hard. I got that email from Ali Abdaal, and it just totally unlocked and gave me permission to say, okay, actually, let's think about how can we shift this to incorporate bigger sprints of intensity. And so my current plan at the moment is that I'm going to work the first week of every month on YouTube videos for the channel, because I'm going to be doing a bunch of studio content, but I also want to have some tips and tricks stuff, just like mixing in Logic or GarageBand or wherever, that kind of stuff, that content. So that stuff is all going to be done in the first week. Masterclass for my community is going to be filmed that first week. And then I'll do whatever other like housekeeping, businessy stuff has to happen that first week. And then I get the other 3 weeks to just focus on the home studio build and the content. So if I'm doing videos about the home studio build, those will happen in those 3 weeks. But 90% of my attention can now be on just the home studio build for 3 weeks at a time is the goal. We'll see. Fingers crossed. I did decently in January, a little less well this month. Daycare, daughter's been sick. Snow days, all that stuff. So she's been home a lot more, which is difficult. But I love my daughter, and so it's great to get extra time with her, even if it's hard. Anyway, so the thing that I realized for me is the problem that I was having with this big pitter-pattering around of stuff. If I am constantly going back and forth between things, I'm not having these big extended periods of clarity of thought. And that matters obviously a lot for a studio build, but it matters even more for making music, for working on music. And so my plan at the moment is to get up to a certain point with the studio where I have a lot of clarity of thought around finishing the studio. And then I'm going to take a period, a sprint of intensity, probably a month, maybe 2, and do a lot of recording on that album. The band's working in their home studios on other stuff for it as well, but I'll be doing a lot of content around recording drums and, all sorts of fun, creative things. I'm going to probably reamp some weird tracks and stuff. I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be fun. So I'm going to bring you all in for as much of that as I possibly can. But a sprint of intensity around the album. And then I'm going to go back in and do another sprint of intensity around the studio, finishing out some acoustic treatment and some speakers and all that stuff. And then I'm going to do a big sprint of intensity. Hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, the end of this year is going to be a sprint of intensity around the book. And so by the end of this year, my hope is that I will finish this book. It probably won't come out by the end of this year, but hopefully I'll finish it by the end of this year. And I think it's going to be a great resource for you. Now, by the way, as I mentioned, I'm working on this big home studio build. Next week or the week after, I'm going to be doing a massive video. This is going to be the start of this huge project that I have in my head about building your home studio like a pro, how to set up a home studio like a pro. Not just in terms of like looking professional, but also that to some degree, but also just how to do it in a way that your home studio feels like super easy to work in. It feels very built for you, made for your purposes. And I think this shift in thinking and the frameworks that I'm coming up to help myself with my own studio build so that's how I know it's going to work, is that it's already helping me get clarity, is going to help give you a lot of clarity to improve your home studio. So whether you've been happy in your home studio or not, I think this is going to be super, super helpful for you. So that's going to be a home studio pro guide that will come out hopefully next week or the following week with an accompanying video where I go through the whole thing and explain the process to you. I am so stoked for this. I am super, super excited for this. And Sweetwater sponsoring the series, which is going to be super cool. Sweetwater is the best. If you don't know Sweetwater, I have a Sweetwater link down below all my videos. If you use those links to get any gear, it won't cost you any extra. Small amount comes back and supports me. But they're just an amazing company. And I think even if you don't use my link, you should buy from them anyway, because their tech support is insane. You have a dedicated salesperson who's a true knowledgeable person in the music space. They're not just like phone support, the order isn't going through. They're like, hey, I'm trying to decide between these two interfaces and I don't really understand the difference. They can talk you through that stuff because they have hours and hours and hours of training. My first home studio or Sweetwater rep went on to be the touring playback engineer for 21 Pilots. So like huge people. Joe Gilder worked at Sweetwater in that position, by the way. So like really competent people work in these roles. And anyway, all that to say, this studio build is going to be awesome. I'm very excited to share it with you. That's why I'm putting so much time and attention into it. It's not just about me doing it for me. It's also what I can bring to this channel by talking about that area as well. My goal with the band guide has always been just to empower you that you can make professional sounding music at home. And now I'm moving into the space as well of the setup and the gear and the recording and not just the mixing side of things, which was never my plan to only be mixing focused, but it takes a lot of new knowledge around filming and gear and stuff like that to be ready to set up, to record and document all those things. So it's been a big learning curve year for me. I'm anxious about it, if I'm being honest with you, but I'm very excited for it, and I'm excited to share it with you. Okay, I'm gonna wrap up. If you struggle to get mixes that you're happy with, please grab my 6-step checklist to a pro mix from the link in the description below. It's really gonna help you out. And if this video was helpful, please just let me know in the comments. And I'd love to hear from you if it was helpful, how you think you might apply it to your projects. I can't necessarily tell you exactly how it makes sense for your projects because they're so specific to everything you're working on and what's going on in your life and all that stuff. But if it was helpful to you, let me know. Or if you just thought it was a cool video and you want me to do more like it, let me know. Or if you don't think it's helpful, Well, I don't know. Don't tell me that. I like it. I'm going to keep putting this kind of stuff out. And I'll see you hopefully next week where we're kicking off our Home Studio Pro series. Have a great week.